1874, Arizona Territory. A storm walked over the land like a widow in mourning, silent, white and unwilling to be seen. Elias Boone had never cared for winter, though he respected it. It stripped the land down to its bones, revealing truths that often went unnoticed. The trees stood like old men, their arms raised in silent warning, and every trail vanished beneath the wind's sweeping hand. That morning, Elias had gone out early, not for any chore, but because the silence in the house had grown too loud. 7 years without his wife, and still the rooms whispered of her. The snow had begun light, a gentle brushing, like feathers falling from the sky. But by midday it deepened, and soon his boots were sinking with every step. He'd nearly turned back when something caught his eye in the snow, a broken line of prints. Not boot tracks. Smaller, barefoot. That alone would have been enough to quicken his breath. But then he saw the drag mark, a faint, staggering shape, like a wounded deer crawling through the snow. Curiosity gripped him. He followed it, moving slower than usual, rifle slung over his shoulder but untouched. The tracks led into a small stand of cedar where the wind had carved out a hollow. There, half buried, lay a figure. She was wrapped in a torn brown shawl. Blood crusted her right shoulder, and her foot was bent at an unnatural angle, agony written in every line of her body. But she was still breathing. Elias stepped forward, and her eyes snapped open, black as midnight, sharp with fear. Her lips parted, cracked and trembling. "Please," she whispered in broken, accented English. "Just kill me fast." Elias knelt beside her and said nothing. He took off his coat, wrapped it around her, and lifted her gently, like a broken reed. She didn't fight. He didn't ask questions. Not then. Inside the cabin, he laid her by the fire. He fed the flames 3 more logs, then boiled water with clean rags. She winced as he cleaned her shoulder, but said nothing. The bullet graze was fresh, not deep. Her ankle was worse twisted and already swelling. He poured a little whiskey and let her drink, though her hands shook too much to hold the cup. Still, she never looked away from him. There was something defiant in her silence, not the silence of fear, but one held together by pride, barely intact. When he offered her a bite of cornbread, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she took it, biting into it and swallowing. Her throat worked like it hadn't tasted food in days. "You got a name?" he asked. She didn't answer. Head and press. Not that night. He sat across the room, carving slow into a peony block with his knife just to keep his hands busy. She watched him like an animal, unsure whether the hunter's kindness was bait. The wind clawed ath windows. The fire cracked low. And in that hush, something else moved, between them thinner than thread. By morning, her fever had faded. The storm had thickened. He boiled snow-fir water and roasted what was left of dried meat. She still didn't speak, but when she reached for the tin cup without shaking, he saw her strength beneath the stillness. When he caught her, trying to stand, he said gently, "You'll tear the tendon clear." Shettened her face to the fire and said, "Better torn than taken." He didn't answer that. The third day, she was staring at the fire when she finally said, "Why didn't you touch?" Her voice was like flint, sharp and waiting to strike. Elias looked up from his carving. Didn't need to. Her lips pressed into a line. "They all do. I'm not them." That's all he said. All her needed to say. She watched him for a long moment, then closed her eyes. Note in sleep, in something closer to surrender. That afternoon, he found her trying to braid her hair with one hand. He didn't offer help, but he laid high-slayed wife's comb on the windowsill near her. A small gesture, not much, but her eyes lingered on it before she reached for it with trembling fingers. That night, she finally told him her name. So Hannah, just one word, and then Silence, again. But he nodded in Sadus in return, Elias. The next morning brought more than snow, hoof prints. Elias narrowed his eyes through frost-lace glass. A lone rider approached from town. McLean, the Apache, a man who liked trouble the way coyotes liked open coups. Elias stepped out onto the porch before McLean could. He didn't smile. Weather's poor for a ride. McLean laughed. Saw Yerkimney smoking. Folks were curious. Heard you took in an Apache. She's still breathing. She is. McLean leaned in. You think that'll sit well with folks. You've given your Ferretto one of them. His voice curled like smoke. What if she's a scout? What if this whole thing's a trap? Elias didn't. Then I'll die warm. McLean spat. You'd risk your ranch for a girl who'dn't even speak your tongue. She speaks her now. She'll speak yes to you, Boone. Y'all take her for your own now. Elias stepped down from the porch. That's not your business. McLean's grin curdled. It is if you're harboring a savage. Behind him, the door creaked. So, Hannah stood in the frame, thin and straight, her ankles still wrapped in torn linen. She met McAllen's stare without fear. I needed fire, she said. He gave one. McAllen muttered a curse and turned his horse around. You'll regret it, Boone. They'll ways come back. As the deputy dade into the snow, Elias So Hannah looked at him and You should have let me. I didn't. She nodded once, then turned and hobbled inside. That evening, the storm finally broke. But it wasn't peace that came after. It was riders, 7 of them. Dark figures on horseback rusting the ridge at sunset. No war paint, no weapons raised, just silence. Elias stepped out once again. No rifle, no coat. So Hannah followed, breath catching in her throat. I know that one, she whispered. That's my uncle. The oldest rider dismounted. Chief, nay, he moved with the calm of a man who's buried more than he's spoken. His eyes settled on Sahana, then Elias. You took her in, Hesad. She is not your blood. She wasn't, but you gave her warmth. Elias nodded once. I didn't do more than any man should. The chief's eyes narrowed. Most men don't. So Hannah stepped forward. He didn't shame me. Chief no look at Bwindom, then spoke a word in Apache. So Hannah turned to Elias' voice even. He says, you have married me. Elias felt the words like snow on skin. Cold, real, impossible to brush off. That's not how we do things here, Hesed quietly. She nodded. Nor us. Beautit's done. He stared at her, at their strength behind her pain. At the girl Woe now stood straight, despite a twisted ankle. The girl who'd asked for death and now wore the shawl of his late wife with dignity, not apology. I didn't mean, but you did not harm me, she said. You fed me. Let me sleep near your fire, and you watched over me with silence, not hands. Chief Nuo placed a small pouch on the step. If you refuse, she cannot return, not with her honor in. But if you accept, we will not return here again. We will speak well of your name. Elias looked at Sahana. She didn't plead. She didn't weep. She just. That was what undid him. Not desperation, but the quiet dignity of a girl who had never been chosen, but was stood ready to choose herself. Hess stepped forward, took the pouch, nodded once to the chief. She's safe here. Chief knew, mounted his horse, said nothing. The riders vanished into Thesnafall like ghosts who'd finish a theatre visit. So Hannah stood beside Elias. The wind lifted her hair. In that moment, she looked older, wiser, tired. I didn't come looking for a husband, she said. I didn't come looking for Anion, he answered. She gave this maliced smile. Then maybe we'll do all right. And inside the house that had been empty for 7 years, the fire burned a little brighter, and the snow at last began to melt. If this story stirred something in your heart, don't scroll away. Subscribe for more forgotten tales of snow, silence, and second chances. Like if you believe kindness still lives in quiet cabins, share it with Samoan who's walked through their own storm. Comment below. Do you think love can grow without a single word? And remember, sometimes the gentlest rescue is the truest vow.